Elena's arms were stretched high above her. She couldn't see. She couldn't speak. And she could only hear their footsteps. 2 sets closing in. She was breathless, trapped, and she had no idea what Michael and James would do next. But she wanted them. Before we begin, I should mention this story came together faster than planned, but Elena couldn't wait to share it. Let me know if it still resonates with you. Let's dive in. Eleanor had already said yes. There was no turning back now. The sheets were clean, the lights dimmed just enough, and candles flickered across the room, casting soft shadows over the space she had prepared. Deliberately, obsessively down to the last detail. She kept adjusting things that didn't need adjusting, wiping down surfaces, straightening pillows. Anything to keep her hands busy. She walked to the mirror for one last look. The black lace fit perfectly, draping softly over skin she rarely revealed. She turned slightly, checking the back, then the front again. She hadn't dressed to hide. That was the point. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with a sharp pulse of anxiety and anticipation tangled together in her chest. She had no idea what to expect. She only knew what she had asked for. She slid a finger along her collarbone, breathing out slowly. Every part of her felt alive, hypersensitive. The cool air moved over her skin, heightening everything. She sat down for a moment, then stood up again. The door was still locked, still quiet, but both Michael and James were coming. That had been the agreement. She thought about saying no, about changing my mind, about texting and calling it off, but she didn't. Beneath the nerves, she wanted it, all of it. Everything she had never tried, never allowed herself to want. That was what tonight was about. No pretending. No control. Just surrender. Then she heard it. 3 slow knocks. It was time. They stood at the door, both of them neither speaking. Michael stepped forward first, his movement slow and deliberate. He didn't ask if Elena was ready. He didn't have to. Something in his calm, towering presence left no room for questions. He stopped, inches from her. She could smell the faint scent of leather on his jacket. Then, without a word, he lifted his hands and slipped a blindfold over her eyes. The light vanished and her world narrowed to breath and sound. The air thickened. Her breathing changed, and she heard the door click shut behind her. Then silence, just the hum of quiet and the awareness of her own heartbeat. She was already shaking, and Michael hadn't even touched her yet. Then she felt him behind her close. His hand brushed lightly over my waist, then settled there, warm, heavy grounding. She held still, uncertain, tense, but she didn't pull away. She didn't want to. His fingers travelled lower, adjusting the angle of her hips, moving her like she wasn't in charge of herself anymore. She let him. Each small shift sent a shock through her legs. Her breath caught when he nudged her knees apart. She obeyed. The blindfold heightened everything. His footsteps, the whisper of fabric, the sound of his breath when he stepped closer. She felt his chest graze her back, the firmness of his grip around her hips, the steady pressure as he guided her further into his control. Then Michael moved. No. Asking. No warning. Just doing exactly what Elena had asked for. Her mouth parted on instinct, and a quiet, needy sound slipped out. Her hands lifted slightly, then hovered, unsure of where to go, unsure of what she was allowed to do. She had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable, so incredibly alive. Michael was slow at first, but never soft. He handled her like something to be claimed, positioned, tested, made to respond. His rhythm was steady, unrelenting, like he was teaching her body how to listen to him. Every second dragged and surged at the same time. She tried to stay composed, to hold still, but it didn't take long before she couldn't. Every shift sent a jolt through her. Her breath fractured her legs, trembled, and she was spiraling fast. Hard and deeper than she thought she could go. He adjusted his grip, holding her tighter, ensuring she didn't pull away. She didn't need to see. She felt everything: his grip, his rhythm, the raw control that stripped away thought and left only sensation. The pressure built, her mind blurred, and she moaned louder than before. She didn't care who heard. Then she unravelled. It rushed through her, sharp and sudden in heat release and collapse. Her body clenched. Her breath broke apart and she gasped out loud, helpless to stop it, trembling under the weight of it all. When her knees started to give out, Michael held her through it, firm, silent, steady. Only when it passed did he let go. He stepped back without a word. Elena stayed where she was, unsteady, trembling, completely undone. She had never been touched like that before, never surrendered like that. And the part she didn't expect. She needed more. James closed in, slower, heavier. He didn't speak, just approached with quiet certainty, like they both already knew what came next. Elena sensed him before she felt him. His presence was denser, different. His hands closed around her wrists and raised them above her head in a firm, steady hold. Her arms stretched high and stayed there. She barely had time to process it before a soft band slid between her lips and fastened behind her head. Now she couldn't see, couldn't speak, couldn't move. James said nothing. Then his hands reached her thighs, confident, unwavering. He shifted her stance and stepped in. She staggered slightly, but the tension above held her. His fingers pressed into her skin with practiced control, measuring how far she would let him take her. There was no pause. He handled her like someone completely in charge. No build-up, just motion, pressure, and certainty. He adjusted her hips and moved her into place, setting the rhythm on his own terms. Her body jolted with every shift. She gasped against the band, but the sound went nowhere. James moved with purpose, measured, unrelenting. Her knees wavered, but she stayed upright. His grip never faltered. Every motion sent something deeper pulsing through her. She moaned behind the blindfold, helpless, overwhelmed and flushed with heat. It was more than she expected, and she couldn't stop what was coming. Her body took over. The pressure rose too fast, spilling past every limit she thought she had. She came apart, shaking where she hung, head tilted back, breath exploding in short, fractured bursts. James held her steady, carrying her through it, not letting go until every wave passed. Then everything stilled. He stepped away, and the quiet swallowed the room. Elena didn't collapse. She couldn't. She stayed there, suspended, trembling, blindfolded, breathless, completely undone. Elena was still restrained, mouth-covered eyes concealed barely upright. Her arms ached from being held so long above her head. Her legs shook beneath her, her breath shallow through the restraint. But she hadn't come down, not fully, not even close. She felt the shift first. The thick air pulled tighter around her skin. Another presence entered slower steps. No voice, but she knew Michael was back. A new grip found her waist firmer, more decisive. Her body tensed, but it didn't matter. She couldn't move. James was still there. He never left. Elena was caught between them, lifted, controlled, completely open. Then came the movement. They adjusted her like she weighed nothing. Her feet were spread wider, her back arched, and the support above creaked with the shift. Michael stood behind her now, his presence heavy against the curve of her spine. She didn't need to guess what was coming. The pressure arrived fast, not slow, not gentle, just a shift that felt foreign, overwhelming, and unstoppable. She reacted instinctively, head thrown back, breath caught behind the cover. Michael anchored her hips. James braced her legs. She was locked in place, claimed before she could adjust. James moved in closer. His hands circled her neck, not tight, just there. His weight met her from the front, and then came a second rhythm. Both Michael and James moved together, one behind one in front, unyielding, intense, perfectly in control. There was no pause, no build-up, just sharp, relentless motion. Elena couldn't see them. She couldn't speak, but she felt everything. The tension, the heat, the weight, where she had never been pushed before. Physically, completely, and underneath it all. The way her own body responded repeatedly. She should have broken instantly, but she didn't. She needed it. She didn't know whose hands gripped where or who shifted her next, only that every movement hit deeper. Her body was lit up, desperate, aching. Nothing existed but sensation. They didn't slow down. Sometimes they moved together, sometimes out of sync with overlapping movements, alternating control, leaving no space to think. Michael's hand gripped her hair. James guided her chin. Her body shook between them. Muffled cries lost in the restraint. And still she wasn't finished. The first wave came fast, rushing through her in hard bursts, knocking the strength from her legs. But they didn't let go. They held her upright and kept going, each motion driving deeper. The second wave came slower. Elena arched again, arms straining against the support. Her body trembled in their grip, mouth parted but silent. She didn't think she could take more, but she did. She felt them together, overlapping each moment, pushing her further than the last. Then she came apart. The final wave tore through her sudden and blinding. She didn't cry out. She didn't breathe. She trembled so hard she couldn't hold still. Her thoughts scattered. Her body faltered. She wasn't in control anymore, and she didn't want to be. Michael and James held her steady as she unravelled again and again, until there was nothing left. Only then did they stop. The room fell still. Their hands slipped away, but Elena stayed in place, still blindfolded, still unable to see, still shaking. Her breath came in shallow, uneven bursts, each one catching on the soft band that pressed against her lips. Her body felt like it was floating and sinking at the same time, suspended in a haze of sensation that refused to fade. The ache in her arms had grown sharper, a dull throb that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. But it was nothing compared to the fire still burning beneath her skin. She was not finished, not even close. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of melted wax and the faint musk of leather that lingered from Michael's jacket. Every sound was amplified in the silence. The faint creak of the support above her, the soft rustle of fabric, as one of them shifted the distant drip of wax from a candle she could no longer see. Her world was reduced to these fragments, each one pulling her deeper into the moment. Elena tried to steady her breathing to anchor herself, but her body betrayed her. Her legs trembled, threatening to give out, and the tension in her wrists reminded her of how completely she was bound. She wanted to move, to speak, to do something to break the stillness, but she couldn't. And deep down she didn't want to. The vulnerability, the exposure, the raw edge of surrender. It was everything she had craved, everything she had asked for. She had spent so long building walls, keeping herself in check, controlling every moment of her life. But here in this room with Michael and James, she had let those walls crumble. She had given herself over, and the freedom in that act was intoxicating. A faint sound broke the silence. A soft, deliberate step. Elena's heart jumped, her breath catching as she tried to place it. Was it Michael James? Both. The uncertainty sent a fresh wave of anticipation through her, her skin prickling as the air shifted around her. She felt a presence to her left, closer. Now and then a hand brushed against her shoulder. Light, but deliberate. It was Michael, she knew it from the way his touch carried that same calm, unyielding authority. His fingers lingered for a moment, tracing the curve of her shoulder before sliding down her arm, slow and deliberate. The contact was electric, sending a shiver through her that made her knees buckle. He caught her, his grip firm but not harsh, steadying her as if he had anticipated the reaction. "You're still with us?" Michael said, his voice low, almost a whisper, but it carried a weight that filled the room. It was the first time either of them had spoken, and the sound of his voice sent a jolt through Elena. It was deep, controlled, with a hint of something she couldn't quite place. Amusement, perhaps, or satisfaction. She wanted to respond, to say something. Anything but the band across her mouth held her silent. All she could do was nod, a small, trembling movement that felt inadequate, but was all she could manage. Michael's hand moved to her waist, his touch warmer now, more possessive. He adjusted her stance slightly, guiding her body with the same precision he had shown earlier. Elena felt James nearby, his presence heavier, more grounded. She couldn't see him, but she sensed him in the way the air seemed to thicken, in the faint sound of his breath. They were both here, both watching, both in control. The thought made her pulse quicken, her body responding even as her mind struggled to keep up. James stepped closer, his hands finding her hips. His touch was different from Michael's, less measured, more immediate, as if he was claiming the space he occupied. He didn't speak, but his silence was its own language. One. Elena was learning to understand. His fingers pressed into her skin, grounding her, pulling her back into the moment. She felt the contrast between them, Michael's calm, deliberate control, and James's raw, unyielding intensity. Together they were overwhelming, a force she couldn't resist even if she wanted to. They moved in sync now, adjusting her position with a fluidity that made her feel weightless. The support above creaked again, the tension in her wrists shifting as they guided her body. Elena's breath hitched, her senses heightened to a fever pitch. Every touch, every shift, every sound was magnified, pulling her deeper into the spiral she had been chasing all night. She felt Michael's chest against her back, the warmth of his body seeping into hers. James stood in front, his hands still on her hips, his presence a steady anchor. They didn't rush, but there was no hesitation either, just a relentless, purposeful rhythm that left no room for thought. Elena's mind was a blur, her thoughts scattering like leaves in a storm. She had never been this exposed, this open, this completely at the mercy of someone else. And yet, it was exactly where she wanted to be. The blindfold kept her in darkness, The band across her mouth kept her silent, but her body spoke for her. Every tremble, every gasp, every involuntary arch of her back was a confession, a surrender to the moment. She felt Michael's hand slide up her spine, his fingers tracing the curve of her neck before settling there, not gripping, just resting, a reminder of his presence. James shifted her hips again, his touch firmer now, guiding her into a position that made her breath catch. The pressure was back, building slowly this time. A steady climb that promised to unravel her all over again. She didn't know how long they stayed like that, moving together in the quiet, candle-lit room. Time seemed to dissolve, each moment stretching into eternity and collapsing into a single heartbeat. Elena's body was alive, every nerve singing, every muscle taut with anticipation. She felt the heat of their hands, the weight of their presence, the way they seemed to know exactly how far to push her. It was too much, and not enough a paradox that kept her teetering on the edge. The first wave came without warning, a sudden rush that tore through her like wildfire. She gasped against the band, her body shaking as the sensation overwhelmed her. Michael and James held her steady, their grips unyielding, carrying her through the intensity. She thought it would end there, that she would collapse into exhaustion, but they didn't let her. They adjusted her again, their movements precise, deliberate, drawing her back into the rhythm. The second wave was slower, deeper building with a relentless intensity that made her head spin. Elena arched against the support, her arms straining her breath, coming in short, fractured bursts. She was losing herself piece by piece, and she didn't care. She wanted to fall, to break, to be remade in the fire of this moment. They didn't stop. They didn't slow down. They pushed her further past every limit she thought she had, into a place where nothing existed but sensation. Elena's body trembled between them, her mind a haze of heat and need. She felt Michael's breath against her ear, a soft, steady rhythm that grounded her, even as it drove her higher. James's hands were everywhere, guiding, claiming, pulling her deeper into the spiral. She didn't know whose touch was whose anymore, only that it was everywhere, inescapable, perfect. The final wave was blinding, a crescendo that shattered her completely. Elena didn't cry out. She couldn't. But her body spoke for her, trembling so hard she thought she might break. Her thoughts dissolved, her senses overwhelmed, and for a moment she was nothing but feeling. Nothing but fire. Michael and James held her through it, their hands steady, their presence unwavering. They didn't let her fall, didn't let her collapse. They carried her through every wave, every tremor, until she was spent, her body limp, her breath ragged. But even then it wasn't over. Elena stayed where she was, still bound, still blindfolded, still trembling. The room was quiet, but the air was alive, charged with the energy of what had just happened. She felt the faint brush of Michael's fingers against her cheek, a soft, almost tender gesture that made her heart skip. James was still there, his presence, a steady weight in the silence. They didn't speak, but they didn't need to. Eleanor knew they weren't finished, not yet. The candles had burned low, their light flickering weakly against the walls. The air was cooler now, but Elena's skin still burned. Her body, still humming with the aftershocks of what she had experienced. She wanted to speak, to ask what came next, but the band across her mouth held her silent. She wanted to see them, to look into their eyes and understand what they were thinking, but the blindfold kept her in darkness. All she could do was feel, and what she felt was everything. Michael's hand moved to her wrist, his touch gentle but firm as he adjusted the restraint. The tension eased slightly, but not enough to free her. Elena's heart raced, her breath catching as she realized they were preparing for something new. James stepped closer, his hands finding her hips again, his touch as steady as ever. They were still in control, still guiding her, still pushing her towards something she couldn't name. The room seemed to shift around her, the air growing thicker, heavier. Elena felt the support above creak again, her body adjusting to a new position. She didn't know what they were planning, but she didn't need to. She trusted them. Not because she knew them, but because she had chosen this, because she had asked for it. Every moment, every touch, every shift was a reminder of that choice, and it filled her with a strange, exhilarating peace. Michael's voice broke the silence, soft but commanding. "We're not done," he said, and the words sent a shiver through her. Elena nodded, her movement small but certain. She was ready for whatever came next. Ready to be pushed further, ready to lose herself again. James's hands tightened on her hips, a silent agreement, and then they began again. The rhythm was different this time, slower, more deliberate, as if they were savouring every moment. Elena felt the contrast immediately. Michael's calm, measured control, and James's raw, unyielding intensity. They moved together, their touches overlapping, their presence filling the room. She was caught between them, suspended in a dance of sensation that seemed to have no end. Every touch was a spark, every shift a flame. And Elena was burning alive in a way she had never been before. She lost track of time, of herself, of everything but the moment. The candles flickered, the air grew warmer, and Elena surrendered completely. She didn't know how long it lasted, only that it was everything she had wanted, everything she had needed. When the next wave came, it was softer, deeper. A slow unravelling that left her trembling but whole. Michael and James held her through it, their hands steady, their presence a constant anchor. When they finally stopped, the room was silent again. But it was a different kind of silence, a silence filled with possibility. Elena stayed where she was, still bound, still blindfolded, still shaking. She felt their hands slip away, but their presence lingered, a promise of more to come. She didn't know what would happen next, but she didn't need to. She was here. She was alive, and she was ready. This story was rushed, I'll admit, but I hope it pulled you in. It's been a journey, writing this, diving into Elena's world, her surrender, her fire. I wanted to capture that raw, unfiltered intensity, the way she gave herself over to something bigger than herself. Did it hit the mark for you? Be honest. Have you ever met someone like Elena? Someone who left you speechless, who pushed you past your limits in ways you didn't expect? Maybe it wasn't a moment like this, but a time when you felt truly alive, truly free. What happened? Who was it? Share your stories in the comments. I'm reading every single one, and I want to know what makes your heart race. If this story spoke to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, so you're the first to know when the next one drops. I've got more coming, and I promise they'll be just as intense, just as raw. Thanks for reading, and I'll see you in the next one.